Hi, I'm Megan Sheen,
And I'm Ella Cristiano.
and we did our physics presentation on catapults.
So we chose this because we thought it was a really interesting demonstration of physics in the real world. And it's also like a really good basic model to understand how it works. And we've also learned about it a lot in a lot of our history classes. So we wanted to dig deeper on the subject and how it was used and connect our history class with our physics class. And it shows the evolution of military technology from the past to present, which is also really interesting.
And so, what is a catapult? So, in basic terms, a catapult is a device that launches an object simply using gravity and stored energy instead of like using gunpowder and other stuff like that that normal weapons used. And so, in this presentation, we're going to cover the history of it and how physics relates to how a catapult works. So, first is the history and how the catapult developed. So, the first catapult was invented around 400 BC, and it was invented by the Greeks in ancient India. And at first, it sort of looked like a crossbow, but after the Greeks decided this was a really good invention, they decided to evolve it. And the very first, like, true catapult was called the ballista. And the Greeks used this a lot, and other people also used it because they realized that it increased the range and power of like normal military technology that was used back then. And the Greeks loved this so much because it caused a lot of destruction and it was like a really good defense mechanism. And almost all catapults were used in ancient Greek and medieval times. So like what that means is like in almost all the battles back then after 400 BC used catapults. And some of the things that the catapults were made out of back then were wooden beams, and sometimes a lot of like parts of horses were used, like twisted like horse hair could like cause tension, and then like horse guts they also used. And items that were thrown at this time were like rocks, hot tar, and spears. So they would throw rocks at their enemies to like injure them and keep them away because it was like defending themselves and maybe like their empires and stuff. And then hot tar would like also injure them. And same thing with spears. It was just another way to throw spears instead of like using crossbows. So
Oh,
now we have the physics of it.
so all the catapults had this thing called a payload, which is launched with stored energy, and it was either through tension, gravity, or torsion. So the trebuchet is the most effective and powerful catapult that they developed, and it basically throws the payload with the heavier counterweight, which is on the opposite side. As you can see in this second picture, there's the heavy counterweight and then the payload sitting in a pouch. And when it gets to a certain angle, the payload is released from the sling, and then the acceleration is in a circular path, which heightens the velocity and causes it to go faster and have more power. And then the mangonel is one of the most well-known ones. It's the third photo, and it's basically an arm that holds this bowl which contains the payload, and then the object is thrown with the rotating arm, and then it's thrown at a certain angle, which is controlled by this bar that stops the arm from going too far. So that way the object gets thrown in the right spot, and it also just has like good momentum. And this is not as efficient as the first one I described because it wastes some of the stored energy when it's accelerating to get the arms to initially rotate. And then there's always a form of tension or torsion which is attached to the arm, which allows this to occur, like the restraining rope. And then that's basically just two examples of two of the most common catapults that were used a lot and just how they work.
And like in conclusion, we thought that this was a really cool project because it showed us that physics isn't just like applied in subjects and in school, but it's applied in the real world, and it shows how much people use physics like even in military technology and like so far back in time. So that was our presentation. Thank you.